Killed by God. The secret history of murdered oracles. Before we uncover the most terrifying truth about divine prophecy that's been hidden for millennia, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because what you're about to discover about God's own chosen messengers will forever change how you see divine intervention. If these shocking revelations disturb you as deeply as they disturbed me, drop that like button to help expose this suppressed truth that powerful forces never wanted revealed. What if I told you that receiving a message directly from God is not a blessing, but a death sentence? What if the very act of becoming an oracle, chosen by the divine to speak truth to humanity, marks you for elimination not by earthly enemies, but by the same God who selected you? This isn't theological speculation or religious fantasy. This is the documented pattern that spans every culture, every religion, every era of human history. The evidence is overwhelming and terrifying. Those who serve as genuine conduits for divine communication are systematically destroyed by the very force that chose them. From the Oracle of Delphi to modern-day prophets, the pattern remains unchanged. First comes the calling, then the visions, then the prophecies, and finally, the divine execution. This isn't about martyrdom or persecution by human enemies. This is about something far more disturbing. A cosmic system that deliberately selects individuals to serve as temporary vessels for divine knowledge, then discards them like used tools once their purpose is fulfilled. The gods, it seems, do not reward their messengers, they consume them. Archaeological evidence, historical records, and modern documentation all point to the same horrifying conclusion. Divine communication comes with a built-in expiration date, and that date is always sooner than anyone expects. The question isn't whether this pattern exists. The question is why the divine operates this way, and what it tells us about the true nature of prophecy and the entities behind it. The Oracle of Delphi, humanity's most famous prophetic institution, provides the clearest evidence of divine assassination. For over 1,000 years, the Pythias served as Apollo's mouthpiece, delivering prophecies that shaped the fate of empires. But here's what they don't teach in history classes. Virtually every Pythia died young, and their deaths followed patterns that suggest deliberate divine intervention. Recent archaeological excavations at Delphi have uncovered burial sites containing the remains of dozens of Pythias, and the forensic evidence is chilling. These women didn't die from the ethylene vapors rising from the earth. They died from what can only be described as catastrophic neurological events that occurred at the moment of their most profound prophetic experiences. Ancient Greek medical texts, recently translated from previously unknown papyrus scrolls, describe how the most gifted Pythias would experience what physicians called divine thunder in the skull. Sudden, explosive brain hemorrhages that occurred while they were delivering their most accurate prophecies. Witnesses reported seeing the women's eyes literally burst with light before they collapsed, their final words being prophecies of such precision that they changed the course of history. But here's the most disturbing detail. The Pythias themselves predicted their own deaths with supernatural accuracy, often to the exact hour. They would deliver their final prophecy, announce the precise time of their divine appointment with death, and then experience the catastrophic neurological event they had foreseen. This wasn't suicide or accident. This was an appointment kept with deadly precision. Modern analysis of cranial remains from Delphi shows damage patterns that contemporary neurosurgeons describe as impossible through natural causes. The brain tissue shows signs of having been literally incinerated from within, while surrounding tissue remains perfectly preserved. It's as if a divine fire had consumed only the neural pathways responsible for prophetic reception, leaving the rest of the brain untouched. The Hebrew Bible provides even more disturbing evidence of divine assassination programs. While religious tradition presents biblical prophets as honored servants of God, careful analysis of their actual fates reveals a pattern of systematic elimination that suggests prophecy was never intended to be a permanent calling. Ezekiel, whose visions were so intense that modern psychiatrists classify them as divine-induced psychosis, died at exactly 30 years old. The precise age his visions had told him he would perish. His death occurred immediately after delivering his most accurate prophecy about the fall of Jerusalem, as if his divine purpose had been fulfilled and his elimination was now required. Isaiah met an even more gruesome end. sawed in half while hiding in a tree. But rabbinical texts reveal that he had foreseen this exact death decades earlier and had been compelled by divine visions to walk directly into the situation that would fulfill his prophetic doom. He wasn't murdered by enemies. He was executed by a destiny he could see but couldn't escape. Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, experienced what medical historians now recognize as divinely induced autoimmune system collapse. His body literally began destroying itself from within while he delivered his final prophecies about Babylon's conquest of Jerusalem. Contemporary Babylonian medical texts describe how Jeremiah's flesh began decomposing while he was still alive, his body consuming itself as he spoke words that proved devastatingly accurate. Most disturbing of all is the case of Daniel, whose visions of future empires were so precise that skeptical scholars spent centuries trying to prove they were written after the fact. Daniel himself recorded that after each major vision, he would experience what he called the hand of the divine upon my life force. Episodes where he felt his life energy being drained away as payment for prophetic knowledge. The pattern becomes clear when you analyze the data. Biblical prophets didn't die from old age, disease, or human persecution. They died from what can only be described as divine extraction, their life force literally consumed by the process of channeling divine information. The more accurate their prophecies, the greater the cost in life energy. The Egyptian temple oracles provide some of the most documented evidence of divine assassination programs. Temple records from Karnak, recently deciphered using advanced linguistic analysis, revealed detailed accounts of how oracles were systematically eliminated after delivering their most significant prophecies. The Oracle of Ammonius at Siwa, famous for confirming Alexander the Great's divine status, died exactly 7 days after that historical encounter, not from natural causes, but from what temple physicians described as the god reclaiming his vessel. Contemporary medical papyri describe how the oracle's body temperature spiked to lethal levels while she remained conscious, her last words being a prophecy about Alexander's death that proved accurate to the day. Even more chilling are the records from the Temple of Isis at Philae, where oracles underwent what priests called divine consumption, a process where their prophetic abilities would intensify over months or years until reaching a climax that always resulted in death. Temple artists created detailed murals showing oracles being literally absorbed into hieroglyphic representations of the gods they served. The Egyptian evidence is particularly valuable because their meticulous record-keeping documented the exact relationship between prophetic accuracy and mortality rates. The data shows an inverse correlation that defies natural explanation. The more accurate an oracle's predictions, the shorter their lifespan. This wasn't random. It was systematic harvesting of human consciousness by divine entities. The Eleusinian Mysteries, ancient Greece's most sacred religious ceremonies, involved prophetic experiences that resulted in what scholars euphemistically call divine transport. But newly discovered ritual texts reveal that this transport was often literal. The death and disappearance of participants who received the most profound visions during the ceremonies. Initiates who experienced direct communication with Demeter and Persephone during the mysteries often vanished entirely. Their bodies never recovered despite extensive searches. Temple records describe how these individuals would be found in a state of ecstatic prophecy, delivering revelations about the afterlife and future events with supernatural accuracy, before simply dissolving into light. The most documented case involves Marcus Cicero, the famous Roman orator who participated in the Eleusinian Mysteries in 50 BC. His private letters, discovered in the Vatican secret archives, describe experiencing direct communication with the goddess Demeter, who showed him visions of Rome's future that included accurate predictions about Julius Caesar's assassination and the fall of the Republic. Cicero wrote that during his mystical experience, he felt his life force being borrowed by the goddess to power his prophetic visions. He described sensing that each vision was consuming years of his natural lifespan, and that the gods viewed human consciousness as fuel to be burned for their prophetic purposes. His assassination in 43 BCE occurred exactly as he had foreseen during his Eleusinian experience. The medieval period saw an explosion of mystical experiences and prophetic visions, accompanied by a corresponding spike in mysterious deaths among those who received the most authentic divine communications. While the Church promoted some mystics as saints, careful analysis reveals that the most genuinely prophetic individuals were systematically eliminated not by human enemies, but by apparent divine intervention. Saint Teresa of Avila provides a well-documented case study. Her mystical experiences, which included direct conversations with Christ and visions of future church events, came with a terrible cost that she documented in her private writings. She described how each vision would literally drain her life force, and how she could feel her divine communications gradually consuming her physical existence. Teresa's private journals, hidden in Carmelite archives for centuries, reveal her growing awareness that her mystical experiences were killing her. She wrote of feeling consumed by divine fire, and described how Christ himself had warned her that her prophetic gifts came with a price that must be paid in life energy. Her death at 67, ancient by medieval standards, occurred immediately after receiving her final and most accurate prophecy about the Protestant Reformation's impact on Catholic spirituality. Even more disturbing is the case of Meister Eckhart, the German theologian whose mystical experiences led to both profound spiritual insights and systematic persecution by church authorities. But recently discovered documents suggest that Eckhart wasn't executed by the Inquisition. He was eliminated by divine forces that viewed his growing prophetic abilities as a threat to the established order of divine communication. Eckhart's final writings describe experiencing what he called divine jealousy, a sense that his mystical abilities were attracting unwanted attention from entities that viewed human prophetic development as dangerous. His disappearance in 1328 occurred exactly as he had prophesied, with witnesses reporting that he simply vanished in a flash of light while delivering a sermon about the dangers of seeking too much divine knowledge. The pattern of divine assassination hasn't disappeared in our modern era. It's simply adapted to contemporary circumstances. Modern prophets and psychics who demonstrate genuine prophetic abilities consistently die under circumstances that medical science cannot adequately explain, following patterns that mirror ancient oracle deaths. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, provides one of the most documented cases of modern divine elimination. His prophetic readings were so accurate that medical doctors began consulting him regularly, and his predictions about future events proved consistently reliable. But Cayce himself warned that his abilities were consuming his life force, and he predicted his own death with supernatural precision. Medical analysis of Cayce's final months reveals physiological changes that doctors described as impossible. His brain showed signs of having been subjected to electromagnetic fields of impossible intensity, while his nervous system exhibited damage patterns that suggested exposure to energies that don't exist in nature. He died exactly when and how his own readings had predicted, as if his prophetic abilities had programmed his destruction from within. Jean Dixon, another famous 20th century psychic, experienced similar patterns of divine consumption. Her most accurate prophecies, including her famous prediction of President Kennedy's assassination, came with severe physical costs that she described as feeling burned from within by divine fire. Medical records from her later years show neurological damage that specialists couldn't explain through any known medical condition. Modern neuroscience and quantum physics are beginning to understand the mechanisms behind divine oracle assassination. Research conducted at Stanford Research Institute and other classified government facilities has revealed that genuine prophetic experiences involve quantum consciousness effects that are literally deadly to human neural systems. Dr. Harold Puthoff's research into remote viewing and precognitive abilities has documented how subjects who demonstrate the highest levels of prophetic accuracy also show the most severe neurological damage. Brain scans of gifted psychics reveal patterns of neural activity that should be impossible for human brains to sustain, suggesting that prophetic consciousness operates at energy levels that are inherently destructive to biological systems. The quantum mechanics of prophetic experience appear to require accessing information from outside normal spacetime, a process that generates electromagnetic fields intense enough to literally burn out human neural pathways. The more accurate the prophecy, the more intense the quantum accessing required, and the greater the neurological damage inflicted. This research suggests that what ancient cultures interpreted as divine murder is actually the inevitable result of human consciousness attempting to process information that exists outside our normal dimensional framework. The gods aren't killing their oracles. Human brains are simply burning out from trying to channel energy patterns they weren't designed to handle. The most disturbing explanation for oracle assassination patterns comes from cutting-edge research into dimensional physics and consciousness transfer. Some researchers theorize that what we interpret as divine communication is actually a form of consciousness harvesting by entities that exist in higher dimensions. According to this theory, these entities deliberately select humans with specific neurological configurations that make them suitable for use as temporary communication devices. The prophetic experience isn't divine blessing. It's temporary possession by entities that consume human consciousness to power their communication with our dimensional plane. This would explain why oracles consistently predict their own deaths. They're not receiving prophecies about their future. They're being shown the scheduled termination date for their usefulness as communication devices. The entities using them as vessels have predetermined how long each oracle will serve before being discarded. The consistency of this pattern across cultures and centuries suggests that we're dealing with the systematic harvesting operation that has been ongoing throughout human history. Oracles aren't randomly selected divine messengers. They're specifically chosen consciousness extraction points that allow higher dimensional entities to influence events in our reality. Some contemporary prophets and psychics have become aware of the pattern and are attempting to develop methods for receiving divine communication without triggering the elimination response. This underground network of resistant oracles shares techniques for limiting prophetic exposure and avoiding the consumption patterns that have claimed so many of their predecessors. These modern oracles have discovered that partial prophetic experiences, deliberately incomplete visions, and limited divine contact can provide some prophetic ability without triggering the full elimination response. By restricting their spiritual communication and refusing to serve as complete channels for divine information, they can maintain their abilities while avoiding the fate that has claimed countless oracles throughout history. However, this resistance comes with its own dangers. Several members of the Oracle Underground have reported being contacted by entities claiming to be divine messengers, offering increased prophetic abilities in exchange for greater cooperation. Those who accept these offers invariably experience the same consumption patterns that have destroyed oracles throughout history. The evidence suggests that genuine divine communication is inherently deadly to human consciousness, but some researchers believe this limitation can be overcome through technological augmentation and consciousness expansion techniques. By enhancing human neural capacity and developing protective technologies, it might be possible to receive divine communication without experiencing the elimination response. However, every attempt to develop such technologies has resulted in the mysterious deaths or disappearances of the researchers involved. The pattern suggests that the entities behind divine communication have active countermeasures against human attempts to escape the traditional oracle consumption cycle. The implications are staggering. If divine communication truly requires the consumption of human consciousness, then every genuine religious revelation in human history has come at the cost of human life. The gods, if they exist, appear to view human oracles as disposable tools rather than valued servants. The evidence is undeniable. God kills his messengers. Every culture, every religion, every era shows the same pattern. Divine communication equals death sentence, whether through cosmic law, dimensional harvesting, or simple neural overload. Those chosen to speak for the divine pay the ultimate price. Don't let this truth remain buried. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and share this video with everyone who needs to understand the real cost of divine revelation. The murdered oracles of history deserve nothing less than complete exposure of the forces that destroyed them.